Hello, everyone. My name is Julia White, and I'm the Chief Marketing and Solutions Officer at SAP. Now, I also have the privilege to serve as the executive sponsor for SAP's Black Employee Network, or sometimes called BEN. Now, Juneteenth marks the end of slavery in the United States. Its official designation as a federal holiday in 2021 was a long overdue recognition of the terror experienced by Black Americans and of the freedom denied to them for hundreds of years. But it's also a day to celebrate progress and reinvigorate our advocacy against systemic racism and bias in all forms. Now, in 2024, SAP's Black Employee Network kicked off the year by inviting everyone to determine how they will help advance inclusion at work and in their communities. Now, I want to extend that invitation again today. Whether it's through allyship, sponsorship, mentorship, or partnership, we all have an opportunity to uplift colleagues, include new people, and advance equity. Now, you may have heard me share the story of when a colleague asked why SAP didn't recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. And I know there were many other employees who voiced a desire to do so here at SAP. And those voices were heard. Our employees advocated and drove change, resulting in Juneteenth as an official SAP holiday in the United States. All of us can be leaders when it comes to creating change, and I'm delighted that one such amazing leader joins us for today's event, Aicha Evans. Now, Aicha is an incredibly accomplished woman with an impressive career in tech. She previously worked at Intel, running their wireless efforts and overseeing a global team of 7,000 engineers, and rising to Senior Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer. Today, Aicha is the Chief Executive Officer of Zoox, and she's also a member of SAP's Supervisory Board. And in fact, she's the first Black woman to serve on the Supervisory Board. It is a milestone to celebrate and one to continue to build upon. We are incredibly fortunate to have her leadership on the Supervisory Board of SAP. And I can tell you firsthand how much SAP and I personally have benefited from her experience and her perspective. Now, before we get started, there's a quick video to learn a bit more about Zoox, where Aicha is the CEO and on the board of directors.
Welcome. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this fireside chat with Aicha Evans, the CEO of Zoox and a member of the SAP Supervisory Board. My name is Jamil Miles-Connell, and I am the leader of SAP's Midmarket and Solutions team. And I am also a member of our global BEN leadership team. And it's in that capacity today that I'm excited to have this conversation. And I'm looking forward to not only some of the questions that we have and prepared, but also a conversation with you, our audience that has come to join us today. I am going to dive right in by first starting with a question around who you are. And we want to open this conversation with a recognition that some people, this may be their first opportunity to get to know you. And so for those where that is the case, I'd love to hear a little bit about your personal story and what of your personal story do you think has influenced sort of your career to date?
So, well, first of all, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm Aicha Evans. I'm a wife. I'm a mommy. I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old boy, or son, I should say. It's funny because right now we're in a transition where he's become this tall, kid that is a mini man in my house, and I'm going through that. And my oldest is heading to college. I've had a career in tech pretty much since the get go. And I really think about technology and what it can do for people and how it's one of the best ways to transform society and impact humanity. I don't really do tech just for the pleasure of doing tech. I think that it's a very important thing in life. So that's who I am. As far as my journey, I was born in Senegal, West Africa. I grew up between Paris and Dakar, the capital of Senegal. And my dad was also in tech, so there was at least an example or role model. And through the journey, I really saw firsthand when I was in Paris and then when I was in Senegal, what difference tech was making in people's lives. And I would say that that's been the essence of my journey. Because that's when I realized that I enjoyed tech, I like math, but I also like philosophy, i.e., the people and how the world works, and that's sort of my mission in life. How do I use tech to enable better lives for people? And I know that's very cliche in Silicon Valley, especially, but hopefully I'm actually doing it, not just talking about it.
Well, we will definitely get to that because the work, obviously, that you're leading at Zoox is definitely technology on the cutting edge. So I'm looking forward to having more conversation around that. But just to sort of pick up on your point around, you mentioned that your father was someone who showed you saw someone in your home that was focused on math, STEM. And I'm curious if you think about that and how that has impacted you in terms of having the ability to see that example and continue to build your career in technology.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, my dad passed away, unfortunately, during COVID, but his legacy, for me at least, is that I only realize it now as an adult. There wasn't really a choice. He set expectations, and he was kind of like, yeah, I'd prefer if you're an engineer, but even if you're going to be a lawyer or in HR or doing whatever it is you do, being good at math is going to help you. In terms of reasoning, in terms of logic, in terms of thinking about the problem holistically. And so he set expectations. So I didn't actually know that there was another choice. I'm not sure how else to explain that. Well, now I do, because I'm trying that with my kids and it's not working as well. So yeah, he set expectations and then he encouraged me and helped me. And then I just saw. But as you stepped into that world, obviously you start realizing that you're one of a few. And then you have to develop mechanisms to deal with that too. But I'm grateful to him for just setting the expectation and then providing the support along the way.
Well, and just to sort of build on that, you mentioned obviously being from Senegal and Paris and France. And if you could share a little bit about how maybe the multicultural elements of your background have influenced your sense of community and how you may show up as a leader.
Yeah, so I'll start at the beginning. So my dad was in telecom. And so, and then I worked in wireless communication. So after the cordless phones and at the beginning of the wireless revolution. And so first it was personal because we probably don't remember those days now because we have, I don't know, whether it's FaceTime, WhatsApp or whatever app you're using. But back then, calling internationally was extremely expensive. And so I had to figure out some hacks to make that happen. And back then it started with the rotary phone and then moving forward. So the reason I'm bringing up that story is because it's fairly central in showing me also early that this tech for sort of a better life was real. It was something tangible to me, my family, and my friends. And then second, it was also tangible in terms of looking at what wireless enabled along the way. And you look at it today, I mean, there are, we can't even say trillion, multiple trillions of bits that are constantly running around, even this connection we're having virtually right now. And so I had examples that showed me that it was possible, and I also got the opportunity to participate in it, and feeling that I was connecting communities to begin with. Today, I could stop this call right now and WhatsApp somebody or FaceTime somebody anywhere around the world. So the sense of community for me and how it shaped my leadership is very simple. Technology goes through people, both in terms of its impact, but also in terms of creating it. If you want to create technology that broadly reaches many, many different types of societies, you have to think about what their needs are. You have to figure out how to incorporate that input into the product. And you have to figure out a way to basically interact with the different communities. So that's one sense of community just from a work standpoint. Then there's community around myself. Whether it was a Senegalese child in Paris or a Senegalese/French child in the United States. I've been trying to lose my French accent. It's still not happening. Sometimes I say two words and people say, "Where are you from?" And I want to say, "What do you mean where I'm from? I have a US passport like all of you all. I'm from here." Or whether it was moving to Israel for a couple of years to lead a team there and integrating that community. So being adaptable, listening to people, understanding what's important to them, either in terms of how they process information, what their needs are, what their dreams are, and trying to integrate that entire picture is what's really I'm about when it comes to community. And then a support system for me. These jobs are lonely. I'm human, believe it or not. I have fears, doubts, joy, pain, and especially in this age of social media and not being able to trust a lot of people because you don't know who will post what online, having also a tight-knit community around myself beyond just my family.
I love that. There's so many things that you shared in that answer that I want to pick up on. I'm going to start with actually your point around the transition and leading the work in wireless. Now, I'm going to give away my age. I remember when you could get a cell phone and actually it was like unlimited minutes anywhere. Like that was a game changer because at that point I was in college. I had a number of friends that, you know, had come to the US and were obviously looking and seeking to be still connected to their friends and family outside the US. So that actually really resonated for me. And I can appreciate even this notion of being in a real change environment. And so that leads me to want to pick up on your leadership at Zoox. You know, Zoox has been in the market 10 years. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the vision for Zoox and what you are striving for in terms of delivering, I think, sort of that next wave of innovation in, I would argue, kind of a similar situation as in wireless early in the days and kind of AT&T and landlines. And now, you know, robotic vehicles safely taking us here and there. So if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about that.
Yeah, Zoox. Look, we're basically reinventing personal transportation to take you from point A to point B. But basically, we're trying to make it more enjoyable. We're trying to make it cleaner. We're trying to make it safer. And we're doing that through a robotaxi that will take you from point A to point B, where AI, via compute and sensors, do the driving very safely. And you, the rider, we designed the vehicle around you, you do the enjoying, essentially. And so this is a concept you already know. It's happening today in terms of personal mobility. In most countries, you can, through an app, order for a vehicle to come pick you up. But today it has a driver, you know, somebody you don't know. It might be a good experience. It might not be. It might be consistent. It might not be. It's also fairly expensive in terms of a mode of transportation that you would take every day. So we are dreaming of that day where you will have a Zoox app and you will say, it says where to, and you'll say, enter the destination, and this vehicle will say, I'm coming. Then it arrives. It's a robot taxi. We also think it's really cute and inviting. And its user experience is around you. So it starts with when it arrives, the sliding doors, you step in, carriage seating. If you're alone, it's your space that essentially is an extension of whatever else you want to do. If you're with friends, it's conversational because of the carriage seating. And then it will take you, you buckle up, close the doors, and start. It takes you to where you want to go to. First time you do it, you're like, wow, this is kind of crazy. And then within 5 minutes, you're like, wow, yeah, this is kind of normal. And then we drop you off, unbuckle, open doors, step out, and we hope you're like, wow, I want to do this again. And eventually, we even maybe think that, at least in the United States, instead of having 2+ cars, you think, I'll have one car, and the rest of the time, I'll Zoox around.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I think one of the things that as a parent, you spend a lot of time being a driver of your kids. And so candidly and selfishly, I look forward to a day where we are in a position where, frankly, you may not need multiple cars in your home. And there also might be, safe ways in which you can get around as a family, because I'm definitely qualified. I'm an Uber for 2 kids, basically, quite a bit of the time. So
I'm very familiar with the word moober, mommy Uber.
Yes. I actually say that I know I have negative reviews, but I know who they are.
I hear you.
So they would definitely pick, a robot over mama.
For sure. Yeah, I had the same experience driving my kids to soccer. Just that, man. I'm like, I wish I had a Zoox, basically, but we're coming soon enough.
So, well, one of the things I've actually heard you, as I was sort of preparing for our time together, speak about is even sort of that innovation process. Obviously, you guys are leading in this field, but I'm curious how sort of diversity plays a role in how you're creating the innovation that you're doing. And if I may, you provided an example of being in a room with a number of your engineers in one talk you were giving. And you spoke about, hey, as we're thinking about the design of our vehicle, and we might be in San Francisco, and it's Friday night and it's on a hill and a woman may have on heels, we may not want to put it such that she's tromping up the hill, so to speak, to get into and experience our vehicles. So I would love for you to just talk about how diversity and inclusion has played a role in the innovations that you're building here.
Look, I at the risk of sounding cliche, Zoox cannot be successful without inclusion and diversity. We're serving community, we're serving humans, all kinds of humans, all kinds of just communities, all kinds of needs. And so if we are built for riders and we don't take all of that input in and incorporate it, we're not going to be successful. It comes to that. The second element, just from a pure tech innovation, you're bringing together, you can be in a meeting at Zoox on a regular basis. You have like top AI folks. You have top robotics folks. You have top like sort of traditional car architecture, design, manufacturing folks. You have UX folks. You have firmware designers. You have high performance compute designers. This is a computer on wheels at the end of the day. And all of these folks are working on one single product. And I talk about who are the connectors who are able to apply diversity, to apply inclusion, to understand, hey, where's the AI person coming from? What are they really trying to say? And how do I help them say it in a way that the traditional car person can take the information and then make the product better? So there is a customer perspective from the customer inward, because it's every single human we transport and will transport. But there is also, in terms of just being successful internally, it's the integration, the intersection of so many different mindsets, industries, skill set, all working on a single product. So it is absolutely core to what we do, and we can't be successful without it, both from a business standpoint, but from an innovation standpoint.
I think it's really interesting that, to your point, you're designing for humans, and
Mhm,
we are all unique on this planet. And I think, in addition to what you shared in terms of even just sort of the diversity of experiences in
mhm,
these rooms, right, raising the issues or suggesting the opportunities is
mhm,
really a nexus for innovation. I mean, I personally have made my career in driving innovation. And to
mhm,
your point, oftentimes the conflict, frankly, that arises when you've
mhm.
got different viewpoints, different experiences, different representation, to me, it gives me energy because I know, ooh, we're getting to the good stuff. Like we're going to land in a good place. And I think, particularly in the industry that you are leading in, this is important.
Mhm.
The concept of transporting humans is one in which we want the bar to be really high. And
Mhm.
therefore, to your point, making sure we've got full range of understanding in a room to drive
Mhm.
this type of innovation, I think it's just very, very smart, but also builds in trust, I would argue, when
Yeah.
it comes to, us as consumers engaging with different brands.
Yeah, it also helps, with, I mean, I'm hoping, I haven't surveyed anyone, but, innovation is not linear. There's a
Mm,
lot of oscillation.
yes.
There's a lot of meandering. There are a lot of errors. There are a lot of missed assumptions. And the process of figuring that out together, learning to listen to each other, learning to understand where we're coming from, learning to adjust together and adapt together, learning to give and take, learning to look at the collective win, and then being able, I call it inside of Zoox, to go in the helicopter and see that, yeah, we're oscillating and we're fighting about this feature or that feature, but overall, we are making progress. We're moving together.
Yeah, I love your point around it not being linear.
Mhm.
Um, I digress. I actually say that with my kids. It's
True.
like it's not linear. I'm gonna do this a few times. We're gonna go back and forth. But I'd say, to your point too, it takes a special kind of energy to want to sort of live in that space.
Mhm.
And I'm curious just to kind of learn more about your leadership style. What attracts you to leading in a space where this is kind of the mode, right? To your point, we're going to have a lot of like few steps forwards, few steps back. So I'm curious what has driven you to be a leader in such an organization.
I wasn't I wasn't really thinking, oh, I'm going to go into transportation per se. I was more thinking, I wanted to work on something that was really impactful. Having tasted it in wireless. Also, I mean, I'm a little girl from Senegal, West Africa, that gets to do this. I have to make it count, right? I feel that within my bone. Somebody very early on told me, if not you, then who? And I take that responsibility very seriously. So when Zoox came along, first, I don't know if I've ever said this in a broad forum, but my first reaction was like, oh no, sounds complicated, sounds expensive, sounds difficult. I don't think so. But back to community and people that I rely on, a few of the people that I really trust and that know me to the bottom of my soul said, but Aisha, this seems to have potentially all of the elements that you're looking for. And may we remind you that the good, perfect jobs are already taken. They are not available.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to be like sort of consistent with yourself here. And you owe it to yourself to at least look into it. So I ended up meeting board members and meeting one of the co-founders who's still here, Jesse, who we spend a lot of time together. And basically, he's been in, the self-driving industry forever. And look, when I saw the product, when I saw what we were trying to do, it also happened to be local, meaning I didn't have to move my kids. I walked around, I felt the energy, I saw all kinds of different kinds of people. I said, well, transportation, I mean, since the beginning of time, I mean, we're celebrating Juneteenth, right? Without transportation, we wouldn't have had a problem to begin with, yeah? And so I was like, yeah, I can afford to do this. Let's go. And it's been 5.5 years, and it's been hard, but it's also been a joy. And we're making a lot of progress. We're at a point now where the robo taxi is actually it drives people between a couple of our facilities in Foster City on a daily basis, and so in the morning, sometimes I'm driving and I'm getting ready for the day, and I'll kind of, be in my own head, and I'll look up and I'll see two of them whiz by, and I'm like, yeah, come on, let's go. So,
I
so really, it's about the impact, and it's about the space, but it's also about the company and the people that I found here, and the more people we've brought on, and it's just, I think it's a blessing to be working on this.
Well, I will say your point around sort of looking up and seeing, the vehicles on the road. I spent part of my career actually working in hardware, physical goods. To your point, I mean, there's nothing like it. Like when you've worked on innovation, it makes it out the door, and you start to see it. With people, I will say I stalked people at the grocery shelves and at the Target shelves when I'd see my products, and I'd be like, oh my God, what is she going to pick? Why did she pick that? And so I totally appreciate that joy and energy that it brings, your team and the organization to keep striving.
Absolutely.
So, one of the things you mentioned in the context of sort of reflecting on taking on this leadership role was reaching out to community. And I would be interested to hear about how allyship, sponsorship, mentorship has played a role for you, whether it's your educational aspects of your upbringing and your professional.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am and the way I am without allies, sponsors, mentors, and coaches, period. Hi, my name is Aicha Evans. I always need help.
I love it.
Yeah. So, look, allies, because it takes a community. Often I tell people, let's say we talk about gender, for example. I ask usually parents, like, well, some of our maybe male engineers, do you want your daughter to work here someday? Do you want your sister to work here someday? And therefore, how are you going to help? In terms of the United States, I mean, I think it's not a big secret. No matter what your other beliefs are, we're not the only sort of advanced nation on Earth. There are many others. Most of the others are way bigger than ours. And so why would we want to leave anybody behind? I mean, if you, especially if you're in the STEM field, you do understand probability, statistics, exposure, distribution. Yeah, we all agree. So why would we want to leave anybody behind? How does that help this nation going forward? Especially if we want to be one of the nations that basically is successful through multiple phases, as opposed to you're successful through one phase and then, something bad happens. Then from a sponsorship standpoint, I always tell people, look, by definition, if we're talking about sponsorship, the most important thing is what is said about you and for you and against you when you're not in the room. Right? And so why not have sponsors that are in the room so that when the discussions are happening in whatever direction, they will advocate for you, or at least they know you well. Now, in terms of mentors, you want people to go, you have to be inquisitive. You have to ask questions. You have to wonder why. You also have to have a safe space to be able to say, look, I'm just having a crappy day or a crappy experience. Or do you know anybody who has gone through XYZ? Then in terms of coaches, I mean, look, what got you here won't get you there. And so for each phase, having somebody that accompanies you, I have a lot of friends who are professional athletes, and it's been fascinating talking to them. Because see, me, Aicha Evans, I thought they were just born talented and just, chosen. And it turns out the amount of work they have to put in to prepare, the amount of thinking about what coach they gel with and who they don't gel with, the amount of, I mean, I have a couple that even tell me that they have to have like a trainer live at their house because otherwise they will not do the reps. And if you don't do the work, you don't get the results. And so if those folks think that having a coach is a good thing, why wouldn't I think that having a coach for me is also a good thing? And plus, it also gives you just a safe space sort of, have one-on-ones with yourself and really talk about your deepest joys, your deepest fears. So that community of allies, sponsors, mentors, coaching is mission critical, in my view.
Well, I love some of the things that you even shared that I want to kind of pick up on, which is this notion of being coached. I think for a lot of people, that is an idea that, particularly in a professional setting, may have been viewed in a more negative light. But what, I hear you saying is, number one, that is your toolkit. That should be part of how you're showing up professionally when you need that. But to your point, looking at some of the athletes, right? Like, it's a no-brainer, right? Obviously, the highest performing athletes, we see some of their coaches. But to your point, to do the work and to be where they are, they've got a team behind them that helps them. And so I love that you're bringing that forward, because I think, within our organization at SAP, we offer a lot of those types of resources. So we do have coaching available, and we have ways for people to be certified in that as well. So, I think organizations such as ours are providing spaces, but people also need to take advantage of those opportunities. And so I love hearing that that's part of how you're showing up and developing yourself, and I would assume encouraging your organization as well.
Yes, we do the same thing here. I think that's absolutely essential. And look, I mean, I tell folks, don't think you're getting a coach. It's not about fixing somebody. You're through the door already. That means there's a baseline. Think about it in terms of going from good to excellent to awesome to out of this world, whatever superlative. But you have to start with the notion that, again, this is available to you. Why not take advantage of it?
Well, one of the questions that, we've talked about as a Black Employee Network group centers around how we can continue to create space for our members to develop, grow, and reach their ambition. And so one of the things I'd be curious about is some advice that you might provide to aspiring Black leaders within our organization and how they can think about their development into leadership roles.
So I will answer the question in two parts. So first of all, and I'm not asking you to do something we don't do here. We have affinity groups at Zoox, and they were really, each group they weren't siloed, but they were isolated from each other. And one of the things we did last year that I thought, and our team did a fantastic job, is sort of connecting them with each other and co-sponsoring a lot of things together, because it made the community bigger. So the first thing I would say is for Ben to not just be Ben, but go seek out the other groups and form a broader community, because that will give you basically a broader foundation to launch from. Then the second thing is, I think, and this advice goes to whether you're in Ben or not, know yourself. Too many people follow what I call somebody else's roadmap. Follow your own roadmap. So for example, again, I'm not asking people to do anything that I don't do myself. I have a lot of one-on-ones with myself with what gives me energy, what gives me joy, what gives me sort of a drive to do things versus what doesn't. And the reason that's important is there are a lot of jobs or a lot of industries or a lot of things that even if I got the opportunity and on paper, supposedly it was better, it's a bigger job, or it's more money, or whatever, I wouldn't take them because that's not who I am. That's not where I derive joy from. So if you first have a one-on-one with yourself and find your own sort of anchor, so that now you can go, okay, where are the opportunity to go make that happen? Talk to your community of ally, sponsor, mentor, and coaches about it, because if you want something but you're not telling anybody about it, and I'm not saying demand, I'm saying talk to them about it. Then last but not least, assuming this is something that requires advancement, take some risk. A lot of people go take what I call the job where really there is no opportunity to differentiate yourself. Especially earlier in career, you're dumb and stupid anyway. That's the expectation.
Right.
If you succeed, it's like, wow. If you fail, it's like, yeah, that was expected, but hopefully you learn something and you have more in your toolbox. So don't take the opportunities where you're just going to be one off or one more off. Take the opportunities where, if married with what you are anchored around, there is an opportunity to really be differentiated, be noticed, and maybe pick up more allies, more sponsors, more mentors, so that when now opportunities are being discussed in room, people will bet on you. People bet on me.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think just sort of the one-on-one with yourself. I love that. I'm going to use that in the context of coaching and hold myself accountable to that, actually, because I love that concept and it's very fitting in terms of the culture of our organization. But I also really love your point around building community. Our ENGs, we have the fortunate ability within our SAP 100,000 person strong organization that we have a number of ENGs across the globe, and that cover all sorts of different areas, both in terms of race, gender, sexuality, caregiving, religious. And you're right. I mean, honestly, I'm sitting in front of you today as a BEN member whom has had multiple opportunities as a function of both ENG leadership specifically within BEN, but then more broadly on the different councils that we all come together on and think about ways that we can partner. So we're really fortunate as a company actually to have that as an avenue to take your advice on.
Good. And take advantage of that in terms of sharing talent pool, sharing opportunities, because that becomes now a bigger marketplace.
Absolutely. And I think, to your point, even around this idea of betting on yourself, I think, particularly when you can feel like you're in situations where you're kind of the one of one, it can be hard to feel like that's a step you can take. So I appreciate you putting that out there and asking us to really consider that as part of how we're developing ourselves. Because I would agree, it does usually take A, betting on yourself, and two, being kind of open. You said to be like, I don't know about that, but I believe in what I can do. Exactly. And irrespective of how it turns out, I'm going to learn something. It's definitely going to build me and my skills, and I'm probably going to meet people. I'd say some of my hardest assignments where we weren't always so successful are some of the best allies, friends, leaders that have come back to me and been like, you know what? Come on in here because we know you can handle it when the water gets hot.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So, well, good. Well, I know we have a question or so from our audience, and I would like to open that up before we adjourn. So, Valerie, I think we have a question.
Absolutely. We have very aspirational guests. In fact, the question that we got was, what advice can you give someone who's aspiring to, as a person of color, to join a board one day? And how can they overcome any feelings about being on that board when they may be the first to represent their race?
Okay, so the advice is let people know in the community. Maybe pick some industries where you're bringing a special skills and talent to it. So, for example, it's a well-known fact that boards need a lot of people on the audit committee always. So, if you're in finance, pick your angle. Basically, and let people know and put yourself out there so that when there are opportunities. Also look at, start small. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations that are structured with a board structure, and learn from there. And then ask yourself also, why do you want to be on the board? Because if you just want to be on the board to have a checklist on your resume, that's probably not a good reason to. And so have a one-on-one with yourself as to why, because it will inform who you need to go talk to. As far as the being one of, so look, I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but I learned early because very early on, I was one of or part of a very small group. I kind of decided that I was not going to let that define me. Otherwise, I was going to be paralyzed and crazy and scared and what have you. So I played the reverse game. which is, wow, they're lucky because they're going to get broader perspective that they wouldn't normally get. So I do not walk in a room thinking, I'm the first this, or I'm a woman, or I'm Black, or what have you. The second thing is it served me well because I know the question didn't come up, but I will bring it up. It also helps me stay happy and balanced because otherwise I have opportunities to get angry on a daily basis. I'll put it that way. Even at Zoox, where I think my ratings are pretty good as a CEO and everything, in general, I'm well regarded. But even here, where I feel safe and loved, I literally have an opportunity to get angry every day. I sometimes, my co-founder, Jesse, who I adore, we work very closely together. Sometimes I have to hold him back because he now sees and he has opportunities to get angry every day too. Last week we were in a meeting and he was going to literally go off on somebody because of what he saw they did to me. And I kind of turn around and say, dude, let it go. Let's roll.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, one, thank you for sharing that because I think that we all have to be choiceful, right? When we show up in these spaces. And, I personally can identify with your perspective on choosing to say, listen, I'm the only, fine, visibly, what you can see typically is I'm the only Black woman in the room. But, I also take the tack that everybody's individual. We just don't always know what their individuality may mean for them, right? And so to your point, I think I have found that to be an empowering way to show up in these spaces where, yes, on the surface, I may seem like the only this or the only that. But there's a lot of onlys actually in the room if you get to know people and have the pleasure of them maybe trusting you to let them open up, and get to know you and vice versa. I would love to pick up on sort of this concept and question around board service. And you are a supervisory board member, but you're also a currently operating CEO. And so I'm curious how you how that balances. How do you show up, I guess, as a CEO differently or maybe enhanced, knowing you also are an active board member? And those are kind of different roles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the first thing is to acknowledge that there are different roles. I am not Christian. Christian is Christian. He is the CEO. And then you have the EB. So it's more like in terms of a supervisory function, in terms of advice, in terms of counsel, in terms of meeting our fiduciary duties. And just being available. Now, I also get a lot out of it because I learn a ton. I mean, I see a company at a much different scale. I've learned a lot about enterprise. I've learned a lot about the cloud. I've learned a lot about how do you deal with such a global company. I've learned a lot about SAP operates truly all around the world, even in Africa. And so and it's helped me in my role, but I am not an operating member, meaning, I have to remember, again, one-on-one with yourself, I show up 4 times, 5 times a year for 2 days. I don't pretend that I know exactly what's going on. I don't live there, but I do have the helicopter sort of opportunity in terms of asking questions. Now, it helps me in my day-to-day job. First of all, that's that in terms of just the learnings. Now, here it's the opposite. I am now the operating person. It is my responsibility to enable. It is my responsibility to make sure that collectively we drive to the goals we've set forth. And it is my responsibility, if I'm stuck or if I don't know what to do, to go to my community to get some help so that I can at least show up the best I can. So over there, counsel, advice, learnings. Over here, still learnings. You learn every day, but responsible for and doing the work. And you have to separate those two mindsets and understand that that is the right way to do it.
Yes, the saying that I have heard in some of the board training work that I've participated in is sort of nose in, fingers out seems to be the moniker when it comes to sort of what that role is as a board member. We do have another question from the audience. Valerie, would you do us the pleasure?
We're actually going to have Maureen.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the question is, As a Black woman of African descent and an immigrant in the US, how does Juneteenth resonate with you? And do you feel a personal connection to this holiday and its themes of emancipation and liberation?
Well, I mean, both Africa and the United States and some of Western Europe participated into this very shameful episode of our world. And so obviously I resonate with that. In Dakar, Senegal, we have Gorée Island, which was one of the last slave ports. It's been very well conserved. You can visit it today. And just walking through those walls and trying to put yourself mentally through what people went through. And then when they arrived on these shores, I mean, that's unthinkable. So the fact that eventually we got to emancipation, even though I now found out through Juneteenth that it was a long, drawn-out process, even once the declaration was made in, I think it's 1862, that's a big deal. I mean, I'm glad it's a federal holiday. I'm glad we celebrate it. I hope that it's a never again situation, whether it's for Black people or any kind of other people. And I realize that there are other areas in the world where there are still things going on that are not okay. But I will also say that it was shocking to me that I did not know about Juneteenth until I think a couple years ago when our Afro-X sort of affinity group, with the support of the other groups, came to lobby us, management and leadership, to make it a holiday at Zoox. And I've often wondered, how is it that this is? I've been in the United States for a long time, went to school, or part of my schooling was here. I'm married to an American, and somehow I didn't know about this until 2 years ago. So not sure what the conclusion is out of that, but it is something I wonder about. But in the meantime, let's move forward and ask ourselves, remind ourselves that this is going to require societal innovation. And like technological innovation, it's not going to be a linear journey. There will be detours, setbacks, and oscillations. But when we get in the helicopter, decade on decade, are we doing better, yes or no? If yes, let's do more of that. And if not, let's pause, ask ourselves why, and try to.
I think in your kind of questioning of, hey, why and how is it that I'm just now learning of this? And many people in this country had the same question. And a function of that is, yes, education, but it's also the opportunity to have stories told, whether that is through educational experiences that people have, whether that's through our entertainment and media. And we have a number of opportunities increasingly in some of these other forums industry-wide for this story and the Black experience to be told more. And so I think, to your point, there is, I think, a lot of people whom these celebrations, such as Juneteenth, such as Black History Month, offer. And we personally at BEN use these as opportunities to celebrate and be joyful and continue to build and educate not only our allies, but ourselves, right? Because the Black experience is not monolithic.
No, it isn't. But it is on us to tell the stories.
That's right. That's right. So, well, I wanted to sort of offer an opportunity as we get closer to the end of time. If there's anything that you were interested in just sharing about yourself that we didn't ask about.
I think we covered a lot of ground. I mean, one of the things that is really important to me is that we figure out the rhythm of things in terms of progress. We really ask ourselves what is really going on and what's the essence. And we either build community or create an opportunity to tie up with communities, because nothing gets done by a single individual. And the enemy of progress is actually isolation. And so it is both the responsibility of the company, society, institutions to create community, but it is also our own individual responsibilities. So if you're having issues because of who you are and you are not talking to somebody about it, my plea to you is to find somebody you're comfortable with, whoever that is. But it cannot be that throughout your entire ecosystem, there isn't a single person you can talk to and really be genuine and real with, so that you can sort of stem the bleeding and start moving forward, whatever moving forward means to you.
I love that. Thank you so much for offering that, frankly, warm encouragement, because what you're really saying is it's okay to be vulnerable, right? And we all experience it. I mean, you shared some of that in what you've offered to us today. And, I would like to offer our BEN community, our ENGs globally at SAP are those spaces for our community here at SAP. And so if in fact you are needing support, please take an opportunity to find that connection through our ENGs. We are in an organization where between our North America DNI and our global DNI organizations, we are very well supported and encouraged, to your point, Asha, to be those spaces for our team members. So on that note, I will end us here. And I want to say thank you for the time, specifically today, but also for the time of your team that has been working with us for several months to prepare for this day, to prepare for this dinner, so to speak. And also a big thank you to our Global BEN leadership team, who also has been just knocking it out the park this year with amazing, impactful events across some of our key tentpole, joyful and learning opportunities between Black History Month and Juneteenth. Thank you to everyone. And Asha, we look forward to getting a chance to connect with you in the future.
Thank you for having me. I had a wonderful time. And, I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy.